You want to sit up front? Guys, we talked about this yesterday. This is the tree. Literally just a ribbon. Garment, but Hyla is not. So then we're going to put this right over here. Lauren also, everyone else can put on the other side. And you have for each of them. And it's something we'll tell. There's a passage that we'll see. Go ahead. Terry. Season or something. Is that a very big friend? That's what we do. This is time for Karen. There's also time for Sloane. Right now it's Karen. That's here. There's also this amazing time of Sloane. So today was good. You guys come on upstairs together.
Yeah, you guys stay where you're at.
There's an inch. That's strange. We've been best friends. That's pretty cool. Again, 7 man. Also, yeah.
Right.
Sugar.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I can remind everyone to please turn off your cell phones. And this family has been seated. There are a few extra chairs. If you'd like one, please don't be bashful.
If you'd like, there's more room under the tent as well, especially those who are in the sun. So come, be comfortable. It's going to be a little bit loud because of the traffic. But what we're going to do, that's why we put together this service handout, so that everyone can hear your voice. Dan and Lauren, Hyla's beloved children, and David and Aubrey and Samantha and Dana, her grandchildren, who she liked a little bit. and of course, Marina and Sharon, beloved daughters-in-law who are like daughters. We're all here to mourn the loss of Hyla Sloane, who, yes, was the matriarch of this family, but as I expressed to Dan and to Lauren earlier, she was the matriarch of Temple Sinai. She, along with a handful of others, helped to build our congregation. And the sheer force of her will, her determination, her sense of what was right has helped to build our community. We all mourn together with you, Dan and Lauren. We all feel a sense of loss, which is why I wanted everyone to be able to participate. This service is being live streamed through the Feldman YouTube, so your voices will be heard. And that's important because there's a lot of people who will be watching online and a lot of people who will be watching the recording. So share with me now, as each of you have some precious memories of Hyla in your life, as we read responsibly on that first page. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, time for weeping, time for laughing, time for grieving, a time for dance, a time for removing stones and gathering stones, a time for embracing, and a time for refraining from embracing, a time for seeking, a time for losing, a time for keeping, a time for letting go, a time for tearing, and a time for sowing, a time for silence, and a time for speaking. Next Friday night is the first night of Passover. Dan and Lauren, this will be the very first Passover of your life with Mom not here. Goes without saying that we won't need bitter herbs to evoke the sting of grief. But as the Seder includes symbols of both grief and joy, bitterness and the sweet, be sure to recall the blessings of your beloved parents and the love they provided for you. At the heart of the Seder is the Haggadah, the book that tells the story of our ancestors and reminds us that the strength of character and faith that helped them is a legacy that we continue to own and cherish. And just as we supplement the Haggadah's stories of our ancestors' redemption from Egypt with tales of the miracles that sustained us in every generation, so too this Seder is a time for each of us around the table to share stories and precious memories of your beloved Hyla this year. Hyla was born and raised in Denver. In fact, she was a second generation native and a fourth generation Denverite. She was the only child of doting parents, Sam and Dina Stool. The family lived in the famous West Side Jewish community of Denver, and Hyla attended North High School and was even on their cheerleading squad. As everyone knows, Hyla was very smart. She earned the Betcher Scholarship, which is basically a free ride through college. She enrolled at CU. Well, Hyla was smart, but she also loved to have fun. Apparently, she was having too much fun for her parents' comfort. So they made her return and complete her studies at DU, closer to home and their watchful eye. They're convinced that she partied too much, but I think that Sam and Dina would just missed her, and they didn't want her to be that far away. Regardless, as a child, Hyla would watch on her porch as a cute boy, 7 years older than she was, helped his friend deliver the daily newspapers. Some years later, a mutual friend set them up on a date. That boy was Don Sloane, who, after his stint in the Navy, was working at his family's window and fireplace business called Majestic Building Products. The business was thriving, but when Don had his first date with Hyla, they knew that they were meant for each other. Hyla did so well at DU that she was accepted into medical school at Stanford University. It was a prestigious offer and an attractive proposition, but Hyla and Don were in love and could not bear to think about the years of separation. So after graduating from DU, they married July 8, 1961. By all accounts, Hyla's dad, Sam, took quite a while to warm up to Don. He didn't think that anyone was good enough for his precious daughters. Truth is, Sam and Dina sort of spoiled Hyla. She grew up with nice things, and as a young girl, there was always a maid who would wash her hair, clean her clothes, and cook the meals. Apparently, Hyla never really ever washed her own hair. As an adult, beauticians would wash her hair. As a child, it was the maid. So don't even think that she was going to get her hair wet in a swimming pool. No, she would tie a floating chair to the railing of a pool in order to soak up the rays. Tons of sunblock on her face, a big hat to give added protection, so her face was protected. but then she'd slather baby oil all over her arms and legs in order to get that bronze tan. That was the ideal of the 60s and 70s before any of us knew any better. It took some time for Hyla to get used to cooking and cleaning. Don's white shirts were put in the same load as red items, so they turned pink. That was not the standard business attire in the 60s for those who worked in the construction and building trades. The first meal she made for Don consisted of 1 steak and 1 hot dog. Guess who got the hot dog? It didn't matter. They were in love, and life was grand. Don was doing great in business, and in 1963, Hyla gave birth to Dan. 4 years later, 1967, Sloane was born. Also in 1967, Hyla and Don joined with Rabbi Zwerin to become one of the first 20 families to establish Temple Sinai. She quickly became a temple leader. The first Temple Sinai Sisterhood gift shop was set up in the Sloane's basement. Now, here's the thing that helped her achieve a profit no matter what happened. Whatever Hyla did not sell, Dawn would have to buy so she could restock. Hyla became one of the sisterhood presidents. She served several times on the Temple Sinai Board of Trustees, and for a few years served on the board as alongside Dan. And I think this is perhaps the first and only mother-son team on the Board of Trustees. Hyla was also a tremendous leader in the general Denver community. She was on the Alumni Relations Board of DU, on the steering committee of the American Heart Association, a member of the Council of Jewish Women, of CAGE, the Coalition of Jewish Education, a charter member of AWARE, Alzheimer Women Auxiliary of Research and Education, and in addition, Hyla was a vice president of LEA Hadassah, chair of the National Multiple Sclerosis Colorado Chapter Auxiliary, and instrumental in the creation of Denver Hospice. In fact, Don and Hyla held early planning meetings with other community leaders to create the Denver Hospice. One of the early ideas was creating the Decorate a Mask project for a fundraiser. Celebrities would decorate masks and they would sell the results to raise funds for the hospice. For years, the masks would be on display at Park Meadows Mall and other places. She and Don wanted to establish a first-rate place where people in hospice would be treated with dignity. It was only fitting that first Don in 2004 and then Hyla just earlier this week spent the last days in the facility that they helped to create. Hyla was the epitome of grace, charm, sharp intelligence. She could also be tough. Dan remembers that when he was in elementary school, there were riots and fights in the neighborhood, and some of the kids and parents felt trepidation about the dangerous situation. So Hyla's dad, Sam, found a solution. He taught Hyla how to shoot a gun and gave her a big German shepherd, which they named Storm. Just that fierce sense. So when she picked up Dan and his friends, Marty Mistel, who's here, and Lou Zarabik, did Lou show up? Good. We're waiting for her. Well, she would come out of her car to pick you guys up with a gun in one hand and the dog on a leash in the other hand, and no one messed with her. Hyla suffered no fools. She had the patience of a saint, putting up with some of the antics that Dan and sometimes Lauren pulled off. Now, I'm not going to go into the details, but a perfect illustration of the strict standards she expected for decorum and the patience of dealing with mischief is the time that Dan, not you weren't at fault, it was a pump that went bad. Nevertheless, you were in the house when it burned down. And thank God for Lauren being there to save you. Well, Hyla saw that her precious house had burned down, and she first asked how you were. Are you okay? Is everything all right? And then she gave you the business. Now, why'd she give you the business?
Because I had a girlfriend over who she didn't like, and we ate in the dining room and didn't clean up.
Right. It was New Year's Eve, he had a date. But the big problem was they had to eat in the fancy dining room. You couldn't just eat in the kitchen. That wasn't good enough. Using the dining room when you could have and should have eaten in the kitchen, that was unforgivable. Burning down the house, well, things happen. Hyla was also a dog. In addition to Storm, she had Jethro and Debbie, and when she was little Tuffy, she loved her dogs. She loved her friends. She loved her sweet Don. She was an incredibly loving mother to Dan and Lauren. She was especially sweet and loving to Sharon and to Marina. When Sharon was only dating Dan, Hyla knew that she was the one for her boy. On one of the early dates they had, they were hanging out at the house, in the Sloane house, and it got late, like even 11 o'clock. Instead of shooing you home, she looked over and said, let's make fudge. And that's when you knew you had a bond. She really liked you. All those that she loved. When Hyla talked to me about Samantha and Dana, that's when she lit up. Her grandchildren, Samantha and Dana and David and Audrey, you were the light of her eyes. When Samantha and Dana became bat mitzvah in the Zwerin sanctuary at Temple Sinai, the synagogue that she helped to build, she beamed with a pride surrounded by so many of you. As you grandkids are dealing with the loss of your beloved Hyla, know that you gave her such joy and nachas. You filled her life. And of course, knowing that one of you is on track to become a lawyer and the other a doctor, well, that's like whipped cream on a Sunday. When I first came to Sinai, she wrote me a note after my first high holiday sermon and service. In her classic and gracious style, she wrote, my late husband Don and I, along with other couples and Rabbi Zwerin, formed Temple Sinai. And I must confess, I was very leery about just how I was going to feel at Rosh Hashanah services this year without my rabbi on the pulpit. She goes on to say some nice things. She concludes with the words that I will forever treasure. It made me a fan of Hyla Sloane. She wrote, after the services, you became my rabbi. So gracious, so kind, so classy, so Hyla. So yes, we will gather around the Passover Seder this year. We will note her absence because she was a force of life and the matriarch of this family and of our Sinai community. We will miss her, so let us honor her by carrying on her precious legacy. Zichronah livracha. May she be remembered as a blessing. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love and hope, to dream, to be an ode to lose. A thing for fools, this, and a holy thing. A holy thing to love. Your life has lived in me. Your laugh once lifted me. Your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. Just a human thing, love. A holy thing to love. What death has touched. I know so many of us have words to share, memories to share, and tomorrow night we'll gather at Dan and Sharon's home and we'll share the stories. But for now, we have the privilege of hearing from Samantha and Dana and from David and Audrey. So if you guys will come on.
When we sat down with Rabbi Rhines to remember Grammy, he told us that it is not typical for grandkids to read at their grandparents' funerals. But we knew we had to say something because, as Rabbi Rhines' beautiful eulogy showed, our Grammy is far from typical. Every grandparent instills values in their grandchildren, but very few do it as stylishly as our Grammy did. Today, we want to share with you a few of Grammy's lessons and ask you to take 4 actions in her honor. First, share something you find beautiful with someone else. Our Grammy was a patron of the arts and always ensured that she shared that passion and beauty with others. Whether she was guiding guests at the Denver Art Museum as a docent, or taking us to the Buell Theater to see a show, she always made sure to share her appreciation for every detail and its meaning. Second, give to the Denver Hospice or Temple Sinai, whether that's financial contribution or your time. Grammy was a fixture in the Denver philanthropy scene and dedicated most of her life to leaving the community better than when she found it. Grammy impressed upon us the importance of empowering others and creating opportunities for those who did not have the same ones we did. Third, we ask everyone to learn something new or do an activity outside of your comfort zone. Grammy always told us that there was nothing we couldn't do if we put our minds to it. We would not be where we are today without the mindset of confidence, aspiration, and courage that our Grammy instilled in us. I mean, look at us. We have an accountant, engineer, and future lawyer and doctor, a Jewish grandmother's dream. Finally, hug someone you consider to be family and tell them you love them. Grammy taught us to cherish family above all else, and that family is more than just blood. When she heard that our next door neighbor had nowhere to go for Passover, she didn't hesitate to invite him to our family's celebration and welcome him as one of the family. Alex has since joined us at Passover every year. Everyone here today, and many others who couldn't make it, were so important to our Grammy. And she considered many of her friends to be family. As we celebrate the extraordinary person that our Grammy was, we ask that you share beauty with others, give to the Denver Hospice or Temple Sinai, learn and step out of your comfort zone, and love your family. Thank you so much for being a part of our Grammy's life and for being here today to honor her.
Let's read on page 3. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination. But life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage. From childhood to maturity and youth to age. From innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowledge. Foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. For there's a beginning and death, a destination, a life's journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death, from life to everlasting. Nailatan Adonai Lataki Hishamanana Zara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatza etchem b'tzamo, v'zan v'chacher etchem b'tzivo, v'mit etchem b'din, v'natah b'tochechem chayei olam. Baruch atah Adonai Dayan ha'emet. We praise you, O God, ruler of the universe. You have formed us in the divine image. You nourish and sustain us in goodness. You have made us mortal, and yet you have implanted immortal soul within us. We praise you, O God, judge of truth. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני רב לא השאיר, תחכה חן בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים. צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, עתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומקיים מצמיח לישועה. ברוך אתה אדוני, נוטע בתוכנו חיי העולם. Eternal is your mind, O God. All life is your gift. Great is your power to save. With love, you sustain the living, and with great compassion, you give life to all. You send help to the falling and healing to the sick. You bring freedom to the captive and keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. We praise you, O God, who has implanted eternal life within us. In about a moment, we'll have earth from Jerusalem that we will place on the side. Then we'll have a chance for a little earth here as well to place. We can't fully cover because there is a fair amount a lid that goes on top, a cement seal. But the family will know that the connection that they have with this physical remains are from your hands and your heart to her. Just as her soul and the neshama, her spiritual remains, are very much in your protection, in your love. Apparently, there's not going to be earth for everyone else. So, again, this is not just earth from Israel, it's earth from Jerusalem, from Mount Olives, and Dan and Lauren, and Sharon and Marina, and the grandkids. They will place this on, and I'll shake a little bit on your behalf as well. There are two prayers that we recite this time. The first is the El Malei Rachamim, which makes reference to Hyla's neshama, her soul. And it says, "Yitzroa b'tzor chayim et nishmata." And may her soul be bound up in the bond of chayim, of life. Bound up with the bond of chayim, the living, with you. El Malei Rachamim shochem amrom Amse menucha nechona al kanvei hashchina v'malot kedoshim v'tovim kezohar ki amazirim en nishmat chayalei bat shmo v'dina shalacha l'olama v'gareden d'yem chata achin dararakanim yastireha This is the kind of it's what and Ishmat Nakalata Nadu Shalom Ishtava Recite together in English. God exalted his full compassion. We pray that you will grant perfect peace and eternal comfort in your sheltered presence. The soul of our beloved Hyla Sloane. God of mercy, protect her neshama forever. And her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Adonai, you are her portion. And she rest in peace. And we say, Amen. The next page is the Kadisha from the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal Shmei Rabba, Ve'alma Devarachot, Ve'yamlich Malchuteh, Ve'chayechon, Ve'yomechon, Ve'chayedechon, Ve'Yisrael, V'agalal V'zman Kavri, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba, Mevarach Le'olam, Ulalei Amaya, Yitparach V'yishtabach, V'pahar V'tromam Yitnaseh, V'tagar V'talel V'talal, Shmei D'Kodishah, Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, ya'amiram ba'ala. Yeshalama raba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu, v'kol Yisrael. Say shalom, say shalom, aleinu v'kol Yisrael. And after the service, it was welcoming. By Dan and Sharon's home. 4-6. My 6 go home because it's Shabbos. Tomorrow night, tomorrow day, they allowed to come 2 o'clock till whatever, 8 or whatever. So all day you can come by tomorrow. We will have a service at Dan and Sharon's home around 6:30, so that I get there from my apartment. Have books for traffic. And what's the book? So that the family and the loved ones can be together in the same house, and that you can share stories. And every one of you here, you're Hyla. Goodness sakes, you have a Hyla story. So share them and be there with them and help as well. On Sunday, so if you turn to the last page, page 6. Let us say for Dan and Roy, for the ties of love that death cannot sever, the companionship we shared along life's path, those gifts of heart and mind which have now become a precious heritage. For all this and more, we are grateful. Thou help us, O compassionate God, not to dwell on sorrow and pain. Help us instead to find within our hearts the courage to return to the tasks of life and its joys. This is traditional to say. I'm going to call me that. Shabala relates young people.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That does conclude our service. Before everyone leaves, is there a Marlene Lipman or Marciana Robertson? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance.